am Artistic Gamer 7 and welcome back to another speed build here on the channel. So this one is obviously already starting off a little bit differently, and it's going to be a little bit differently during the whole entire time. So first off, I am going to go ahead and sort of apologize early on for the camera. I'm hoping it's not too bad. I actually did not speed up this video as much as I do usually do my speed builds, which resulted in me having to make it into two parts. So this is part one, and part two will be out shortly after, like, either the way I do my builds sometimes on the channel, sometimes one's out 1 week and one's out the next week. When it comes to the parts, I usually try to actually post them within the same week. So one is on Wednesday while the other is on Saturday. So this one technically should be up on Wednesday, and the part 2 should be up on Saturday when I do go to post these. If for some reason it's not, it will be next Wednesday. So, but yeah, it should be Saturday. Anyway, so back onto the reason why I did sort of slow it down. So basically with this terraforming that I did, changing the land and stuff, and then where I put a lot of the buildings and stuff, because there's multiple buildings on this, and I'll get more into that in a bit, but it causes the camera to judder around a whole lot more than I realized it was going to. So I don't know if it's going to seem too bad for you all or not. I hope that it doesn't. Hope it's not too much of a movement that is really bothersome or anything to anyone. So hopefully it's not too bad, but I am just gonna go ahead and let you know and apologize in advance just in case. Because it might be a little much. I know it was getting really annoying and frustrating for me while building, because it was just getting to the point where I was like trying to look at something and the camera would constantly be jumping up and down, and it was so annoying. But I dealt with it in the end. Like, I was able to make it through this build. So now on to the actual build itself. So like I said, there is going to be multiple builds on this. And this build technically is going to be a photo shoot area for the next cast series that is going to be following after Pokemon Create a Sim Series 2. So I already know which cast series I want to do next, and this was sort of a build that I was doing for it so that I could take pictures at it. I've used the same build for the Pokemon cast as I did the first one, so I didn't actually record building it because I just randomly decided to make it one day when I went to go do screenshots of the actual Pokemon, so I really actually just needed to work on it very quickly and get it up and out and not, like, stress about recording it and making sure it's actually recording and all that stuff and worrying about the camera and everything. And I actually, the house that is there, I actually downloaded it from the gallery because, like I said, I was in a hurry, and I just made some changes to it on the outside because the outside part was what I was going to be worrying about because I wasn't taking any pictures on the inside for that particular one. But with this one, since I am now sort of trying to make sceneries for any of my Create Sims, some of them I throw together really quickly, but if I'm ever going to have, like, a lot that's going to be donated to a giant series, so, like, with my Create Sims that are from the Occult Discussions videos, so the ones that I made for those, I didn't technically make a big set area. I do have a lot where I've been taking all the pictures the same, and I'll just every once in a while add things and edit things for those particular occults so that the background for those pictures makes sense or whatever to a certain extent. And then also, like, my little green screen area wall that I put them in front of for the thumbnail pictures, where I actually have to take out the background. But yeah, so that one also didn't really, but these ones that are going to be like a bigger series, and they're not because they're attached to something else, they're just a series all on their own. I would actually like to be, like, making the builds from them from now on, so, and having, like, an actual set to take them on. I've enjoyed actually having the Pokemon one and stuff. So I thought I'd actually make a set for this one as well, the one that's coming up. I'm not going to say what it is just yet, but it is more along the lines of, like, what I'm building this for has, like, feels of games that are, like, Fable and Elder Scrolls and Witcher, like, you know, some of those more old, like games that are set more back in, like, medieval times, sort of. I am using CC, as you've probably noticed. I'm also using the live edit objects as well as the show hidden objects cheat. You have to use the show hidden objects technically to get the live. You're supposed to put it in before you put in the live edit objects. But I think I did use some items that was from that one on its own, and then also the live edit objects. But yeah, I am using CC in this one because the fact that it is for photo shoot ones, and if I do continue to make builds for like a photo shoot area for any of my Create a Sim videos or any videos along that lines where I'm building a build specifically to take pictures of Sims in that area or on that location, I probably will use CC just to make sure I get the full effect of what I'm wanting it to come across of. And this particular one is needed, like I said, it needed like that old school, almost medieval vibes going on to it. And so I do have quite a bit of things that are downloaded for that sort of vibe. I will say, I will put this up on the gallery, even though it does have CC. And I will let you know, a lot of my build CC, unlike my Create a Sim CC, most of it does just come from one place. Not completely all of it, but like most of it. And that is the Sims resource. When it comes to that type of CC, I don't try to get a whole lot of it necessarily in my game as much, because to me, the CC I want the most is the Create a Sim CC, and then, I have a few mods here and there that I actually use, but my build stuff is usually just I come across stuff that I actually like and I think I might use every once in a while, and I'll download it. Some of it does come from other sites, but for the most part, it is the Sims resource that I mainly use. If you see any CC in this build that you really want and would like to have in your game, feel free to ask me if I could figure out where I found it. I will say, a lot of people provide like CC links and things like that when they do CC builds or CC Create a Sim, and I gotta say, you people are amazing. I do not know how you do it. The way that I get CC, I just don't think I could constantly keep up with the list, because I have CC that is extremely old even. If it doesn't seem to be causing an issue in my game and I still like it when it comes to like the cast and build objects, I will just keep it in there. And I do like every so often I'll do like a cleaning of my CC. So CC that for some reason I've started to not like, or it has gotten broken from updates, or whatever it may be. If I no longer need it in my game, or it's not functioning the way I want it to in my game, I go on and I clean through the CC, like the cast, I clean through the builds, and I take them out. But I don't go strictly by folder, like, oh, this folder's been in here for like 3 years now, I should just get rid of it. I don't do that. So therefore, it is really hard for me to say, like, where I got CC at from, like, several years ago. I do know that my Sims resource technically has, like, a history of my CC, and I can actually go and see pictures of it and everything like that. And some CC I might remember where it's at, so definitely feel free to ask where I got a particular CC, and if I can find the link, I will 100% provide it for you. I will put it down in the description, or in a comment somewhere, like comment to you and tell you where it's at, just so that you can have it if I can figure out where it's at. So definitely feel free to ask. I just can't promise 100% that I will find an exact link for it or know where it's at. But I will try. I promise that I will try. But, anyway, so that is basically what it is with my CC. That's why I don't include, like, a CC list, especially with my Create a Sim, because that's the worst one. It's harder to know where I get that CC from, because I get them from so many places. In all of my Create a Sims and even my speed builds, I do have a list of the main places where I get my CC. So you at least know where those places I mainly go look at are, so that maybe you can come across it, but I don't put specific links. Because one, when I'm doing Create a Sims, I don't have a set plan on what that Sim's gonna look like at all, so, and then trying to make sure that I find that CC, it would be really hard. But I will always try. So even in my Create a Sims, if there's a certain piece of CC you like a whole lot in my game, definitely always feel free to ask. If I know where I got it from, or I can find it again, I will definitely send you a link and tell you where it's at. But I just can't make a promise. And the same goes for any of the builds like this build. I may not be able to make a promise I know where I can find it or where to go to it, but I will try my hardest. But yeah, with this one, I definitely needed CC to give some of the vibes. I didn't want to use, like, the same wallpapers over and over again, and one of the wallpapers that only, like, actually give the vibe off that I would have liked it to is the ones that are from Get Together, which they still worked, but in the end, I ultimately didn't use them in this build. I started to, but then I changed my mind. But yeah, so these are all little individual buildings, as you can see. They're all meant to be homes, but from experience from me playing games that are along the lines of The Elder Scrolls and The Witcher and Fable and stuff like that, I think Fable actually has... I haven't played too much of Fable, so I can't go 100% fully tell you what I did in those ones, but I do know the buildings looked similar. They were somewhat bigger, at least what I could tell, in the cities anyway. The houses outside the cities, not so much. But yeah, houses aren't really that big in, like, little villages and things like that as, like, houses are today. So these are all meant to be, like, individual houses. Now, obviously, I'm not playing on this lot. This lot is literally used for screenshots. And I didn't even know if I would be taking any screenshots inside the houses because people that I'm using for the series, like, I'm going to be making Sims for the series, I don't know if I would actually use the inside of the houses except for the one that's very up on the hill, which is actually not necessarily meant to be a house. It's more of like a shrine or something along those lines. But I'm not actually quite sure if I would even use the inside of them, but I did actually decorate the inside of them. I decided, since, you know, I made a video on this, that I was going to do the inside of them as well. But it was definitely something different, trying not to focus on putting a whole bunch of stuff in the houses, and I had to use the fridges from Realm of Magic because they were the closest ones that could work, because I still was trying to make this lot be somewhat usable if for some reason I ever did want to try something with it, or if anyone does download it, because I did use some stuff from the game itself anyway, obviously, and I didn't use just CC, but if you had most of the CC, or found most of the CC, or I was able to get a lot of it, I do know what the medieval stuff and the medieval items and stuff, basically a lot of those that I used, I do know came from the Sims resource, and I had looked them up specifically for this build. I used words like fantasy, medieval, and I think that was the main two search bars when searching in the Sims resource. That was the two main ones that I used. But I could be wrong. There could be another one that I tried using. But those are the two I remember using to find a lot of this stuff. So you probably will find a big majority of it just by going on the Sims resource and searching those things. Like, a lot of these wallpapers I just had gotten. Like, some of its older stuff had been on there a little bit longer, but I personally had just gotten it and found it on the site. So it'd be pretty easy to find, but I still was trying to make it sort of set up sort of functionally, like if it could be played at. The Sims should be able to walk on every parts of these. I haven't got to fully play test it, but I was trying to make sure none of the hills were too big for them to actually walk up to and things like that. So Sims should be fine to walk around this lot. I'm not going to make 100% promises when it comes to some of the objects, but it should be fine. But yeah, so I do decorate all the inside of the houses and do the outside. I focus most on the outside because that's where I'm planning on taking most of the screenshots. So this was definitely an interesting way to build because I was doing, like, so much of the outside stuff ever before I ever touched the inside stuff. And thinking about the layout of the buildings and things like that, I didn't do a lot of that at all. But, and I also really hate that all these houses are technically on obviously a different height, and they're not attached to each other at all, but it's registering almost like they are on the same height, so I can't make one building, like, wall size on a taller set than other buildings, because I really wanted to make that upper building sort of like the middle height level for the walls, and everything else be the shortest level, but it wouldn't let me, so I just went overall the shortest level. I did temporarily raise them back up to the middle to make the Realm of Magic door work, Because the way that door looks like most of the upper part that hangs over for the small walls is not even part of the door that actually opens. The doors still work. I've done that on a few things where I raise the heights up so that I can use the medium height doors on a small height. When you shrink it back, the door stays. Still functions just fine for me, so I don't see a problem with it. I really hope the camera's not... I just seen the camera jumping up a whole lot while I'm doing the windows. I really hope that it isn't so bothersome to everyone. I tried my best to go a little bit slower when I realized that that was happening a lot, and I tried my best for it not to happen so much, but because of the way it worked with this terrain the way it was, it just kept doing it, and such, which I don't use terrain too often, so that wasn't even something I was thinking about when I first started this project and started raising the terrain up. And part of the reason why I don't use the terrain as much is because, unlike in, I think it was Sims 3, that when you manipulated the terrain, the land around your lot would also slightly edit and slightly be manipulated. So it looked more of a natural flow from outside the lot into the actual lot you can build onto. I just thought it looked better and more fluid. So I rarely use the terrain options, but sometimes it works in a certain area. I'm actually building this in Granite Falls, which comes with Outdoor Retreat. Now, obviously, and I think I have it it's going to be uploaded as a national park, because that's what this lot was. It was the national park area. And I actually made sure that it could function. Like, all the requirements for a national park is in this build, technically, because, like I said, even though it's got CC, I'm still going to upload it to my gallery, but so it will still function as a national lot if you want to keep it that way. But yeah, in this area, I thought like some hills and mountains didn't look too off, because there was hills and mountains close enough by, and the terrain, even though in the immediate area of the lot wasn't super hilly or anything, there was terrain at least close enough by that it sort of looks like it made sense. So that's why I placed it here, and that's why I'm going to be taking the photos here in Granite Falls, which is probably going to make things harder, because I'm just going to keep having Sims go on vacation so I can get to the lot to take the pictures, but oh well. Or I think I only need one Sim to go to the vacation, and then I'll just summon them all with the pose player and teleportation mod. But anyway, so but yeah, so that's why I don't really use the terrain too much, and when I do, I don't normally go very exaggerated with it. I don't do hills like this and stuff. And I also can't stand with the terrain tool that you can't change the color of the hills and stuff. Once you dig so deep, or you raise the ground so high, it starts automatically putting a permanent terrain on the side of the hills and slopes and things. I had this same problem when the terrain tools first come out, and I actually did a build purposely using the terrain tools because they had just come out. And it was the Dry Lake Park, which it was meant to be like, at one point it was like a little lake there, but because of the way things were, the lake eventually dried up, and now they use the lake bed, and you actually can go down in there and hang out in there and do stuff down in the lake bed, and they still use it as a park. You just don't have the lake anymore. But yeah, so I had dug down instead of up, and you can change the sides. Luckily, I did it in Oasis Springs, and the automatic default, like, texture that's it automatically puts on it for digging down, at least, wasn't too odd looking and different from the regular. But in cases like this, it doesn't necessarily look bad or look odd. But the thing is if a hill has been there, if you're on with a story like the hill has been there for a long time, and like it wasn't a man-made hill, grass can grow on hills. Like, it doesn't have to be just dirt on a hill. That is more of like if you constantly are disrupting the ground, or that hill or hole is new. So the fact that we can't put grass on the hills is bothersome, because if you're trying to go for a more natural look, like that hill has been there for a long time, you can't, because it's just dirt. So one of the things I did in this, when it comes to the smaller hills, they're not like a super darker green, brown as compared to some of the places, and you can actually slightly put some like terrain coloring on it. It wasn't too bad. But when it came to the bigger hills, I had two things that I did, And I don't show the whole process of doing it because it can be very, very tedious to watch it over and over again. I don't know if you're going to get to see either one in this first part. I think at least one of them will start showing. But basically the big hill that's in the middle, I put rocks around it. So it's like it's sitting on a rock mountain. And I put the little, from the live edit objects, the cave entrance, which I actually have never went into. The little secret place that you can go to in Oasis Springs. For some reason, I haven't been there. I've seen stuff, I've seen pictures, and I know what it looks like in there. It's like a cave with a lot of crystals. But the entrance to it is in the live edit objects. I actually put it out back. So to go with that theme that there's rocks at least somewhere around this mountain, I made the biggest part of the mountain actually a rock itself. Or like it is a rock, and with some grass and dirt that has gotten on it and things like that. So that I eventually encompass with nothing but rock. And then the other hills, I take one of the grassy looking options. It's actually from, I think it's from base game, to be honest with you. But it's one of the grassy options that is in there. And I just constantly keep sitting it down there in different sizes on the side of the hills. And that took so long. This build, after trimming out the, well, not after trimming out the dead parts, but after, like, actually getting in there, and sometimes for some reason with my videos, like speed build videos, when they get really long, and I put them into my first editor, it takes, like, the last frame, and then extends it by, like, 30 minutes or an hour, so it looks like I have more footage to deal with than I actually do. Once cutting off those end bits that wasn't even part of the video, I had, like, 10 hours and like so many minutes of video to cut down to try to get into one, but then keeping in mind that I knew that the camera was sort of going to be going all over the place because of the terrain, I didn't speed it up as much. I probably could have got this whole build into one video, but I did not want to speed it up that much with that happening because of the terrain. So I purposely made it to where it would go into about 2 halves equally after adding the screenshots and editing everything out that was like dead space or repeat things. So I did try to take out anything where I was constant scrolling or doing the same thing over again. So like even the rocks in the middle, like I said, that probably is going to be in the second video. And I'll talk more about it then when I actually see it show up. But when I was dealing with that, it was a long process, so I cut a lot of that out. I cut a lot of the grass that I ended up putting on the side of the hills out. Basically stuff that got way too repeaty, I did try to trim down. Like I showed like the big, like a part of it, just so you could see what I was doing, but then I would cut out some of it so that it just wasn't constantly, so that I can get this to be trimmed down as much as possible. But this is as much as I can trim it, and without going way too fast for the camera the way it was, I had to just go with the flow of things here. So it is 2 videos, but I really was happy with how this build turned out. Obviously I mainly like the outside. The inside of these buildings wasn't the focus, but considering like it's meant to be like an old school village or whatever, I was still pretty happy with how I got the inside done and things like that. And yes, you should have already seen it by now. Actually, quite a bit by now. But, I had the Skyrim dragons. Someone had made, like, little, like, CC versions of the dragons for Sims. They don't move or anything. They're a static object. And the only reason why I got them was actually for the thumbnail for the dragons video for the Occult Sims discussions. Sims 4 Occult Discussions video. So I literally only downloaded those for those thumbnails, but I hadn't took them out yet because I was going to take them out after taking the pictures for those thumbnails. I just hadn't got around to it, and I'm sort of glad I didn't because I still used it for this build. He's getting himself a little drink of water. So I'll be keeping them in a little bit longer so that I can have them there for taking pictures at this location. But like I said, I really enjoyed this build. I liked building this one. I love fantasy stuff so much. If a fantasy pack was to ever come to Sims 4, and they did it well, I would automatically, like, even with a lot of the stuff that still needs to be fixed and things that annoy me with Sims 4, that would make Sims 4 go so much better in my eyes. Like, this would be an unpopular opinion, but if they included a true-on, full-on fantasy pack that was really good, that gave me a lot of the stuff that I would have used for this build without having to use CC, dragons, fairies, elves, stuff along down those lines, magical forests, whatever, something along those lines that was, like, fantasy-like, I would probably put Sims 4 above all the rest. Just because I would so love a fantasy pack, and though we have gotten fairies before, we have technically got dragon pets before, I don't think we've ever gotten anything that had 100% full fantasy vibe in Sims. So, I personally would absolutely love it. I would be so excited about that pack. Like, I mean, the sad thing is that a lot of these packs eventually let me down. Even the ones that, when I start playing it, or I start seeing people playing, I was like, oh, that looks really fun. Something starts happening that messes it up. Like, Eco Lifestyle, I was first not excited for it when I seen the trailer, and then I got excited for it after seeing people playing with it, and I was like, well, that's interesting. And then the NAPs had to be too much. Too annoying. Like, there was issues with all of them. And I'm still trying to go through my game and fix everything that those have caused. And the fact that they still work on community lots, and people stealing things, and trying to brew the stupid, de-stressing thing all the time, and I also found out that neighborhoods that have nothing but community lots still get NAPs voted on them if you have the thing free enacted, which is stupid. Because there's not a single living house there that you can even go to and change that on, like, I'm having to go through and make, like, the community lots temporary residential lots so that I can go on there and force all the NAPs off of those lots so that when I go visit these community places, they're not there. And you have to go to every single individual neighborhood within the world. So every neighborhood in Willow Creek, every neighborhood in Newcrest, every neighborhood in San Myshuno, whatever, and make sure that certain NAPs are not installed, because when you go visit those places, and apparently also the NPCs, which there's apparently a mod, which I'm going to download, that helps this, but NPCs are supposed to lose the NAPs from other neighborhoods when they visit them, but they don't. So any characters that you're not controlling, when they visit a neighborhood, they keep those NAPs stuck to them. And then when they visit another one, they get those stuck to them too. So then they start having all of them basically just attached to them. And it's so annoying. So I'm having to try to fix all of that right now, which is why, like, I haven't really got to record my Fame Trio. I want to do some update videos on the EV and Forgotten families, but I can't do those. Like, I'm trying to work on that process right now. So I'm going through and making sure that everything's good with all the EV and Forgotten family. But these NIPs are slowing me down so much. But anyway, that is a totally different thing. Oh, yeah, the rocks are actually in this one. So, what I was going to have to say, if you want to do something like this where you have the rocks covering the hill, but you don't necessarily want them sticking out too much, you have to make basement levels and go build on those basement levels, and it makes almost no sense to me how this is working. But I just had to basically play around it. I think I ended up having to make like 3 basement levels to get the rocks on different heights and different variations of the hill. But yeah, it was basically just a lot of playing around, I had to go back and forth from basement level to upper level, basement level, upper level, down to the second basement level, back to the upper level, second basement level, back up, third. It was a process. So I did show a little bit of that just in case I don't ever know if someone's else maybe seen other builders do it or not, but if you ever end up trying to build like terrain stuff for yourself, I wanted to at least include this, like if you're trying to do hills and you want to put rocks around it and actually make the rocks try to look somewhat natural, you have to do a lot of finagling. But eventually I got them mostly how I wanted them without clipping into some of the buildings nearby on the lower levels. I added some bushes and some mushrooms because mushrooms just, fantasy feel. But also just some plant life and stuff around the rocks, so it looks like, plant life was starting to grow on the rocks. The rocks have been there for a while and stuff like that, and they just built on top of these rocks and stuff like that, just to make it look semi-natural and like they were there and these people had to work around these rocks and stuff like that. And I think it actually turned out really well. There's some things that I wish the rocks would look like a little bit more. I wish there was more rock options, in all honesty, but ultimately I still really liked how it turned out and I was really happy with it. But it took forever. It took so long and fooling with it and finagling with it. So it was a stressful build, but it was a fun build all the same. But this video is actually should be coming to an end for this one. Definitely stay tuned for part 2. I will try to remember to put part 2 down in the description below so that you just click it straight from this video. I've actually been pretty good at remembering that with the parts, the ones that have multiple parts so recently, so hopefully it should be down there. But yeah, it should be the Saturday after seeing this that it comes out. If not, it will be the Wednesday of the following week. But yeah, hope you're liking this build so far. Hit that lovely like button if you like this video and are looking forward to part 2. Make sure you're subscribed so that you don't miss part 2 as well, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye!